Welcome to another episode of Season 2 of Cohort W. I'm your host, USAWOC faculty member and current Warrant Officer Historical Foundation Fellow, CW5 Leonard Mominy. In today's episode, my incredible guest will share some personal and professional experience, mentorship, and leadership as a senior warrant officer. The senior warrant officer will then examine how this insight should ultimately influence action, development, and education for those they serve and the greater cohort. The conversation is directed at leader development, talent management, and what they are doing to support the Army for large-scale combat operations, or LSCO. Finally, all Cohort W guests will have an opportunity to share a favorite anecdote from their career as a senior warrant officer. Today, I am joined by the Cyber Center of Excellence Command Chief Warrant Officer, CW5 Sankey. Thanks so much for your time today, sir.
No, absolutely. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
So do you think maybe we could start off by sharing a little bit about yourself with the audience, to include how long you've been a warrant officer? Everyone seems to get a kick out of how long we've been in service.
Sure. My name is Paul Sankey. I'm a Signal Chief Warrant Officer 5, and I've been a warrant officer for exactly 20 years as of this month. I joined the Army in 1986, but I had a 5-year break in service following Operation Desert Storm. So I just reached 30 years of active service this December.
30 years of active service. Congratulations. And I myself passed 24 not too long ago. So you said you're a signal warrant officer. Could you tell us a little bit about that specialty, maybe how you hit a feeder into your area of expertise, and then what's your current duty position?
Sure. Well, I started out as a 31 uniform, which was a signal support systems specialist. And as an E6, I converted over to 251 Alpha, which is a information systems technician. As a CW5, all of the signal warrant officers roll up into 255 Zulu, which is a senior network operations technician. And right now, I'm serving as the Command Chief Warrant Officer for the U.S. Army Cyber Center of Excellence.
Command Chief Warrant Officer for the Cyber Center of Excellence. So how does that differ? Just, some of our listeners may not know, compared to, say, if you were the Chief Warrant Officer of the branch for either cyber or signal.
Okay, well, the cyber COE maintains oversight for both signal and cyber branches. It's really up to the Signal RCWO and the Cyber CWAB, which are also CW5 positions, to manage warrant officer affairs within their respective branches. It's my job to ensure that this is accomplished within the Cyber COE Commanding General's intent, and that there's synergy between those two branches. As a signal warrant officer, it's sometimes a little difficult for me to maintain impartiality between the two and make sure I'm keeping the best interest of both branches in mind. I have to rely a little heavier on the cyber CWAB to help me decide what recommendations to make in the cyber and electromagnetic warfare realms. On the other hand, I have to be careful not to encroach on the signal RCWO's responsibilities, since I'm a lot more comfortable in that realm.
I can see where that would be complicated, because like for me, I'm an aviator. And so the USACE aspect really is just one branch. We have a lot of specialties, but it's just one branch. And I couldn't imagine what it's like managing multiple houses, so to speak. And that makes sense about the 255 Zulu. I mean, with that being said, and you kind of gave a wave top with respect to what you do at the Cyber COE. What does the day-to-day work look like?
Well, really, my primary function is, as with all warrant officers, is to serve as the advisor for the Cyber COE Commanding General and all the issues related to signal and cyber warrant officers across the Army, as well as the other branch warrant officers that are assigned to the CCOE. Arguably, it's also, I have influence across Fort Gordon since the CG is the senior mission commander here. I also advise the CG and the staff on technical issues, especially as it pertains to .mil-PF integration, as that's pretty much the Cyber Center of Excellence's function. I provide mentorship and guidance to the warrant officers that are assigned to the CCOE, as well as our students, and that often includes WOPDs to the in-session classes. I represent CG at technical and training-related events, forums, working groups, and I'm the Cyber COE representative at senior warrant officer events and forums, all the way up to the DoD level. I maintain general oversight of the warrant officer affairs within each branch and actively seek ways to promote synergy between the two of them.
I know that that's got to be incredibly detailed and complicated to kind of coordinate. And I'm sure you really do rely on those other CW5s. There's been a lot of activity on social media of late. I'm seeing people talk about CyberForge and some of the other aspects of bringing cross compo or cyber warrants from National Guard and other formations into some training. What's that all about?
Well, we try as much as possible to cross-pollinate between all the compos to keep everyone proficient. As we saw over the past 20 years, we relied heavily on compo 2 and 3 in all of our operations. Right now, we're also, in addition to keeping that integration in the operational aspect of it, we've recently been using them a lot for instructors. We've had a shortage of instructors here at the house, and Compo 2 and 3 have really stepped up in providing us some additional help in that arena.
Yeah, we had a guest on CW5 Pat Nelligan. I'm quite certain you know who Pat is.
I do.
Yeah, he's the USARC command chief. And, that is a pretty insightful gentleman. And he had been talking about how he's made it an effort to supplement and more actively partner with brothers and sisters in arms, so to speak, across compo. He's very total force minded. I really like chatting with him. And I know that we've received help from both AGR sort of slots and reserves down at the Warrant Officer Career College, and it's meant a lot. Before we move on to talk about certain leadership efforts you may be working on, how does your work as a senior warrant officer leader serve to the betterment and support of both your branches and the Army as a whole?
So really, it's ensuring that the signal and cyber warrant officers are adequately trained and to accomplish their missions. That we have enough warrants to fill required positions. That those positions are in the right units and the echelons that best facilitate overall mission accomplishment. And then the signal and cyber warrant officer cohort is postured to leverage the interactions and codependencies between signal, cyber, and EW functions as a force multiplier. And that's a really, really important part is that synergy piece between signal and cyber. It's very easy for them to get stovepiped in their own domains and to kind of ignore each other. But then when you get out into the real world, into the field, there are a lot of codependencies there. There's a lot of interaction there, and they need to know how to work together from the schoolhouse on.
Absolutely. It seems like we, according to new doctrine, are moving well beyond simple combined arms application and into this realm of convergence. We want to see convergence across domains. So I'm sure that it's quite eye-opening for them once they head out to the field.
Oh, absolutely, especially when they get into the joint force.
And we talk about it a lot with our senior students. ILE and senior students when we hit up force management or total Army analysis, and what you were just speaking to, where you're ensuring that they're trained and ready to go for those commanders. That's for all our listeners out there, they are tending to the role that all those individual branches play as part of the Army to help put the right people, those technical experts, into the formations. So that the combatant commanders can make use of them. As the command chief warrant officer at the Cyber COE, what are some specific initiatives or focal points regarding leader development and talent management that you would like to discuss?
Signal and cyber warrant officer skill requirements are really changing drastically right now with the DoD shift to data-centric operations and a unified network. It's always been a challenge to keep pace with the rate of evolving technology in these schools. But now we're undergoing a fundamental change in the way we operate, especially on the signal side. We're taking advantage of combined arms centers, warrant officer PME modernization effort to update skill requirements and institutional learning across all warrant officer MOSs at CCOE. Further, a lot of the signal and cyber warrant officers are very specialized in their skill sets. It's almost impossible to be an expert across the full spectrum of information technology and cyberspace operations. This makes it very important to place the right officer in the right position. The AIM-2 process was established to help get the right talent to the right place, but in the end, it's always tempered by the needs of the Army. When I say we, the Cyber COE Center of Senior Warrants, stay close contact with HRC to help balance needs of the Army and soldier preference, along with placing the right skills in the right job.
Well, it definitely sounds like you are applying these initiatives and hitting the right focal points to make the members of your branch more lethal and ready to support large scale combat and multi-domain. With respect to the in-depth complexities, and that inability to maintain a one deep expert. Do you feel like the combination of talent is still meeting the necessary, guidance that's being laid out in that vision in FM30?
I think so. So we all know that warrant officers are very adaptive, and that's the one thing that we encourage is, we're not going to teach you everything you need to know here at the school. You've got to continue to learn, and you've got to adapt when you get out into your unit. When you're out there alone and unafraid, you need to reach out to your warrant officer network, which is our strength, is always having people to turn to when you need help. And then there's a plethora of online training that's available to help to upskill them once they get into the situations.
Courses. I'm an educator at the college. What education or training, whether technical or Common Core, do you see as being relevant and impactful to the development of your warrant officers? And can you explain why you feel this way?
Well, I think it's very important for our warrants to understand the theory behind the technologies that they're expected to employ, and not just teach what we call, buttonology or specific systems. We're depending heavily on industry education and certifications in this realm, as well as opportunities for training with industry and advanced civil schooling for certain follow-on assignments, especially as we get more into this data engineering and data science and data architecture realm. Given the broad diversity in studies in duties, depending on unit mission and location, it's really not practical to teach everybody everything. As I was saying before, they're going to be encountering requirements for skills that they've never seen before when they get out to certain units. Again, we leverage distance learning and our regional signal training sites to provide upskills for the operational force and those skills that aren't as pervasive across the force. Depending on the MOS, we also need to ensure that they're prepared to execute in a tactical environment. Our MOSs are becoming a lot more receptive to assessing from lower enlisted and even civilian applicants. Cyber operators and coders, they're not very likely to end up in a tactical unit, but signal and EW warrants, they absolutely need to know how to operate in a tactical environment from day one. So as we open the accessions aperture to individuals with limited or no tactical experience, we have to make sure they receive adequate field training exercise time to be successful.
Talent management of personnel is a major undertaking. It's a critical component to organizational success. How are you and the Cyber COE holistically approaching the recruitment and subsequent management of that talent?
Well, for recruiting, our senior warrants visit AIT and NCOA classes here on Gordon to get the word out about becoming a warrant officer on a regular basis. We also understand that it takes a healthy pool of enlisted candidates to feed the warrant officer cohort. So CCOE works with local schools to promote STEM programs, and many of our soldiers volunteer with these programs. And that results in an increase in potential recruits focused on STEM-related MOSs. That said, we don't really find recruiting as much of an issue for our MOSs as we do retention. And that has a lot to do with talent management. Our warrants are often offered salaries in excess of $200,000, even from, as W-2s, and that leads most to retire at 20 years as a CW3. A lot of them, however, have stated that job satisfaction and proper talent management plays a big factor in the decision, and that would convince them to stay. It's a challenge to make everybody happy in the military, but there's always some assignments that no one wants to go to. The key is to leverage the AIM-2 process, I think, to make sure that we're putting the right KSBs into the right jobs. The other piece is messaging to commanders on proper utilization of their warrant officers. Our warrants tend to be much more satisfied when they're being challenged and are honing their skills, performing the duties that they are intended to perform.
So you just talked about talent management and making sure that folks are equipped in the right jobs with the right KSBs, the right knowledge, skills, and behaviors. What sort of behaviors or competencies do you think are kind of intangible to the warrant officer, whether signal or cyber, what you would like to see or see further refined in those individuals?
Well, certainly, I think there's got to be a certain amount of empathy. I see a lot of people that they just they shut down and put blinders on where they see a certain situation and they don't take all sides into account. I've seen a lot of situations since I've been here where I'll initially lean one way, and then after looking into the situation, then I can see both sides of the situation, and we can make a more informed decision. Certainly, a breadth of experience in their field is important. That's especially at the branch here, and as a CWAB, I think it's kind of a little bit less important, just because you're going to have the branch that you came from, but then you'll have the other branch or branches that you're not as familiar with. So you need more those leadership type skills in the CCWO slot. That said, we do look for, we actually have a Signal and Cyber CW5 board of directors, and we look at each one of these nominative type slots, and you can self-nominate, you can have a command nomination, or the board can nominate people for that position, and then we'll list out all those KSBs, their performance and everything on kind of a baseball card for the CG to evaluate, and then they'll go and they'll interview those folks to put together their own opinion about them and see if they want to hire them for the job. So yeah, I think the KSBs that we typically look for in any senior leader or CEO is really what we need in these positions.
So you're saying there's a point where eventually the technician has to also put on the hat of the generalist and start to really apply some of those larger leadership type skills that we have hammered into us over time, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that once we get to the CW5 level, you're going to be more dependent on your CW3s and 2s to work with you on that technical piece, because I'll tell you, the last time I did something technical was several years back. At this point, it's more about leadership, and then that broad technical knowledge at a more strategic level or Army level to help facilitate decisions at the 2, 3, and 4-star level.
There's got to be a W3 or even a W4 out there, and they're thinking to themselves, I want to be just like Mr. Sankey. I want to be in that position. What do you say to them?
So I think I would say to them, and maybe this comes a little earlier on, but always remember that your boss's technical advisor. Make sure you're always candid with them. They may not always like what you have to say, but respectfully tell them what they need to know. Don't try to dance your way out of a question. If you're not sure of the answer, tell them you're not sure, and then use your warrant officer network and research skills to find the answer. I think more for a CW3 and 4 is to never stop learning. No matter how much you never know it all. And then, if you really want to make it up to this CW5 level, I know that especially in the signal and cyber realm, they love to specialize. They love to deep dive into one specific facet of our tradecraft. But as a CW5, you need to have more of a breadth of knowledge. So try to diversify. Try to do some jobs that are kind of outside your comfort zone.
Absolutely sage advice. So it's been said that experience is the best teacher. What experience, success, or even failure have you learned from the most?
Well, I think this is probably the most, because it was one of my first. My first enlistment, I was a light wheel vehicle mechanic. My first day on the job as an E2, I was sent out with a grease gun to go lube a deuce and a half. Crawled under the truck, connected the hose to a fitting and started pumping. I heard somebody walk up and looked up between the grill and the bumper to see my company commander, who had kind of come out to welcome me, and I kept pumping. And he asked me how I knew when I had put enough grease in the fitting. And I kind of matter-of-factly pointed to a joint by the fitting and said, "It'll start coming out here, sir." And he pointed to the other side where there was a long string of grease that was coming out onto the ground. And he said, "Hey, just remember, when somebody asks you a question, they often already know the answer."
Yeah, that one's definitely true. But do you have any interesting or formative anecdotes from your career that you would like to share with the audience? It could be funny, could be inspirational.
Well, other than what I just told you, really just a very simple quote that I've kind of kept with me, and I share this with my subordinates and with my sons. Basically, it's just, if it's worth doing, it's worth doing right.
Yeah. One of my favorites that I like to share with my kids is do nothing that lacks purpose.
Yep, that's another good one.
Well, I tell you what, we will not keep you any longer. We know that you're a very busy person, and we appreciate you coming on to the show. So it's been great to hear senior warrant officers talk both doctrine and share mentorship with those they seek to serve. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, absolutely. Anytime. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, we really appreciate you just sharing your leadership and insight. And I think it goes to show everyone that, senior warrant officer leaders are out there and they're contributing day in and day out and working incredibly hard to help the Army meet, the doctrinal requirements for our force for both the current and future fight. So for updates on Cohort W and the Warrant Officer Historical Foundation, you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Simply search for @WOHF1918 or the Warrant Officer Historical Foundation. Finally, to learn more about how you can support programs like this, please visit warrantofficerhistory.org.
Cohort W. Cohort